Before we start, Jen, how's your mother doing? Oh, good.
Bit sore, but she's okay.
Oh, good. We're all thinking of her.
Thank you.
Okay, it's 6 p.m. and I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll quickly go through the roll call just so to make sure that we can all hear each other. Mr. Corson?
Here.
Ms. Beleska?
Here.
Mr. Beaupre?
Here.
Mr. Dyer?
Here.
And Miss Damon? Okay, we're all here. Miss Alfont?
Here.
And Mr. Poria?
Here.
With the exception of Mr. Poria, we're in the very beginning of the alphabet, if you think about it. On this, everybody else on the call. All right, so this is the opportunity for people who are in the audience, the public, to come forward if they have any questions or comments about something that is not on the agenda. If it's covered by the agenda, would you please wait until that point? So raise your hand if you would like to have a question, comment. All right, seeing no one, let's move on to the town administrator's report.
Okay, so I don't have anything new on the Stone Wharf engineering study from the last meeting. The Indian Point study, I included some preliminary findings. Those are mostly just for you to peruse. There's no action items here that anybody's looking for. So I just asked that if you just could keep those maps that were given to you for when the final report is due. I expect that when the final report is ready, and I expect to have that in the next couple of weeks. I included information on the Public Works backhoe, but I would assume we'll talk about that during the warrant discussion, unless there's any questions now. And then
well, maybe do you want to have the discussion now and then or
that's up to you.
What's the sense of the board? Do you want to talk about the backhoe now or later? Okay, nobody seems, it's up to you, Justin. We can do it later.
Okay. And then I wrote a little bit about the housing webinar that I went to. There was some information that I would say would be useful to us. Some of the discussion was more about urban areas. But overall, it was sort of a hold on, wait and see. There's a lot of ARPA money. There's a statewide Affordable Housing Commission. They're trying to put together some basically some boilerplate project types or zoning changes or other types of things that towns can assist with. So we'd have more of a holistic look at it. So I think overall, there's some exciting things coming, but nothing seems to be ready just yet because they haven't quite decided how to use all those ARPA monies yet. With that, I'll take any questions or I'll move on to the treasurer's report.
Anyone have any questions of the town administrator? Anyone in the audience have a question or a clarification? Okay, so by consensus, can we accept that report? No one said no, so okay, we've accepted by consensus. All right, now the treasurer will put on a new hat.
Okay, so we're reconciled through August. At that time, there isn't that much exciting at this point because we hadn't started receiving property tax payments yet. So you can see the cash balance wasn't as high as it usually is, but there's still plenty in there. Not to be concerned. We've received most of the property tax payments now, at least the first payment. So we have more money than that currently available in the checking account. So we don't have any worries in that regard. And as you can see, there's not a lot of income or really that many expenses for this time period. But if you have any questions, I don't have anything major to bring up, but I'm happy to try to answer any questions that you might have.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
How does the 5395 collected at the solid waste, from the transfer station compare in the past? You don't have to answer that off the top of your head because you probably don't have it, but I just wondered is that better or worse or?
I don't know, but I can find that out for you, Donna. I'll take a look for you.
Yeah, Bo?
Sorry, hit the wrong button. I'm just wondering, I had a couple questions. Any luck on getting a new auditor?
No,
Okay. There's a couple items on here that, this is only a couple months into our new budget and they're at, the high numbers are on the expense side. Like technology is at 64%.
yep. We have a lot of one-time costs. It's all the licensing and things for our computer system. So a lot of that cost is a one-time fee. So we do get hit with that up front.
Okay, that's what I figured there. The law enforcement.
That is usually like that because we're paying for his services for July and August. So the remainder will just be his few weeks that he's here in June.
Okay. What was the other one?
This coming June.
The marine supply line, 31
Under Public Works or under Harbor Master?
Harbor Master.
We spent, I think a lot of that money was some of the new buoys and things that we put in, the channel markers this year. There was we didn't have all of the chains and all that stuff that goes underneath, so we spent some money on that.
Okay. And then I was flipping through the solid waste. It made me remember about the painting for the steel beams in the dump.
Yes.
Where are we at with that?
We're gonna have to do that through the budget process. The two quotes I got are significantly more than the 20,000 available. They're in the 35,000 range to get that done. So it's something we'll have to talk about when we're doing the capital budget.
All right. Thank you.
Okay,
So something totally out of left field. Could we ask Gennaro to make arrangements to get that boat out of the parking spot?
Yes, he was going to, if it's not gone today, it'll be gone very soon. He was gonna ask
Okay.
Public Works to move it. It's
Perfect.
going to the dump. I think the for sale signs are a joke that are on the side of it.
Well, we ought to charge the guy $500 for taking it away.
well, how many parking tickets do you get during that period of time that it's been there? Unless they've been moving it each time, I don't know. Mark?
You'll be glad to know that someone hauled it out of there today, Jay.
Ah, okay. Thank you.
Justin, I had a question about the auditor. I was talking to Marjorie on the back of the boat when she was here the last time.
Yep.
And she suggested that maybe we should get in touch with the Department of Education because, and Jen maybe can help us with this, but that they have a date by the beginning of December where they have to have certain numbers in.
Right.
And that maybe we could get in touch with somebody in Augusta and they could advocate for us. I don't know if
Sure,
that would
I can-
help but I think it was worth a shot.
I'll probably have to reach out anyway, just to tell them that they're not gonna probably get their numbers by then. So I'll have to ask for an extension.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, by consensus, can we accept this? Nobody's got an issue? Okay, good. All right, let's move right along to, we're moving along to the first item, which is to consider the broadband warrant article for a future town meeting. And I just want to say something before we start. I spent a long time reading this article and thinking about it from various perspectives. Thinking about, did I understand what it was saying? Was there going to be confusion depending on how it was voted? And I feel that it needs to be, personally feel that it needs to be more explicit. And because I want the people of Shebig, including me, to know what they're actually voting to do. And all this is really talking about is the money. And this question was brought to us from the Broadband Committee, who have made a specific proposal. And I feel we should vote up or down on that specific proposal so that everyone knows that that's what we're actually doing. So I'm suggesting that we add specifics into the description. The remainder of the article are boilerplate regarding finance and can stand as written or suggested by the town attorney. But I had sent this to Justin earlier late this afternoon, and he's going to share it on his screen, but I'm going to read what I have written and the changes that I made. To see if the town will vote to authorize the issuance of up to $975,000 in general obligation bonds or notes of the town for the purpose of financing the town's share of the cost of developing and building a town-owned fiber optic broadband network capable of delivering internet access to all residences and businesses in the town, designed, implemented, operated, and maintained by Axiom Technology, as described in the report from the Shebig Broadband Committee, date September 30th, 2021. The details of such borrowing, including provisions that the bonds may be prepaid or subject to call for redemption with or without premium, and the dates, maturities, denominations, and interest rates be determined by the Board of Selectmen. Debt service will be paid by Axiom Technologies, not by the town's taxpayers. And to me, that's much clearer exactly what people are voting on, because we all know we're all being inundated with some of these conflicting ads on television about some of the articles. And this really, so there's no question, if somebody votes for this, they're voting for a specific proposal. If they vote against it, they're voting against a specific proposal, as opposed to having it broad. And so I'm suggesting that language, and if someone would like to make that motion, we can then ask for a second and talk about it. Is there anyone who would like to move that as just a place to start discussion?
So moved.
Okay, thank you, Bo. Second? And Mark seconded. Okay, so that's where I'm coming from, because before, when I read it, there was nothing about what specifically we were asking what was going to happen if people voted yes. And that's where I think people get confused. And this way, if people will know what they're actually voting on. So I'm opening it for discussion from the board, and then I'll go to the public. Jay.
I'm glad to see that you made this much more specific. I think that's good. The problem is that we don't really have a specific proposal that what we're voting on right now is to give Axiom $1 million, give or take, and they'll create a broadband system, we hope. There are no specifics. There's nothing you can get your hands on or wrap, any kind of a specific proposal that you can wrap your hands around. Every time we ask a question, it's, oh, well, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. I would like to see this in a written form that we can make a decision on, a judgment on, as opposed to, let's give Axiom $1 million.
Okay,
I
thank
mean, I'm
you. I
glad-
thought that was in their
I'm-
report. Sorry.
If you read their report, everything I've read in their report does not lay out exactly what's going to happen. It needs to be a contract. And the other side of it is that we need to have somebody who is actually able to uphold the other side of the operation. I mean, right now, basically, everything that we're told is Axiom will take care of it, and Axiom will do this and that and the other thing, which is fine, except if they can't, it's our system and we're on the hook for it.
Okay, that's more of a debate about the actual, whether or not we do it. I guess my question is, how do we word it for,
And can I would like to just, I'm
sure.
sorry to do this, interject one other thought, which is probably not necessarily totally appropriate, but that's as may be. Consolidated came back to us and said, or at least I understand that they came back, I didn't actually see it, and that if town ownership was not an issue and they could own it, they would love to come back with a proposal. And I get, has anything been done about that?
I don't know, but I think that, I guess my personal feeling is that if people vote this down, then that would be the next step. But
I'm just asking if somebody responded to their response.
did
Or
we
is
get
this, or is
anything?
this just all set up for Axiom?
Okay, Justin, did you get anything from them after that last email that we got?
Unmute myself. There we go. Nothing to me. I don't know if it would come to me or not. I told them that we would, someone could submit anything they wanted, but I don't know if it would come to me or if it would go to the broadband committee. I haven't received anything.
But our response then was, anything they wanted to send in was okay, you'd look at it?
I said they were welcome to send in anything they wanted. I didn't make any promises that we would do anything with it. I just said I would accept it and pass it along. So I don't know what that meant, because it wasn't really my place to speak for the committee. They have their own process, but they were reaching out to me. I figured I'd take it, and if I got anything, I'd give it to you folks. But I haven't received anything.
So anyway, I guess my thought was, if people are not, think that Axiom is a bad idea, then vote no. And then we either say we're never going to do it, or we go to put it back out for bid, or we do whatever we do. But I think we just need to get something off the table or on the table. And I don't know, when I read that report, I thought it was pretty clear they were presenting something. If people don't agree with it, that's a different story. Then they should vote no. But so how does anybody on the rest of the board, because remember, all of what we're trying to do tonight is come up with a warrant article. And if we don't come up with a warrant article so that people can vote one way or the other on this, there probably will be another warrant article that will be brought to us that will be a citizen's petition. So that's why I looked at this and tried to come up with something specific that people could at least say yes or no, they didn't like it or they did. Bo and then Mark.
I have concerns putting Axiom's name on there. I'd rather see either provider or something like that. So to me, as far as the warrant, I say send it to the town, have the town vote on it, and decide what what they want. By saying that, I have concerns with putting almost $1 million to our debt service. Even if Axiom is paying it, it's still under the town. And we have some big projects that are going to be coming up, hopefully, Stone Pier, and then roads, other projects, just in general. And I'd hate to see if that debt service, impedes on other projects. I do have some concerns about it being, after 20 years, we own it, and it's going to be essentially a used car at that point. And I hate to have it so that we own it, and then after 20 years, we'll have to invest some more town money to upgrade the system. Or we find a provider that would upgrade it for nothing. but it's just one of those thoughts. And, I know there's multiple things that the town owns. That's the same kind of principle, but I was just throwing it out there.
Yeah, no,
Thank you.
appreciate that comment. I did some research, or I asked Justin to do some research about the debt service. And I don't want anybody to have a heart attack and think I'm suggesting this number, but we have the capacity in this town to legally indebt ourselves to like $18 million. I'm not saying that we should do that, but we could do that. So just throwing that up, I'm just to let you know, Mark and then Jay.
I agree with Jay's statement that a supporting document showing the intent of the installation, the intent of how the service would be provided, and the intent of how the system and the infrastructure would be maintained by this proposed company would be a good thing to have before people vote on this. Some sort of at least a draft of a contract that basically says, this is what you're going to get for install, service, cost per month options, and speeds and maintenance. Thank you.
Jay?
I want to go back to your $18 million worth of debt service. That would be the maximum state law would allow.
Right. I wasn't
That-
suggesting we
that-
do it. I was just,
No. I understand that you weren't suggesting we do that. I'm not, that would be we'd have a different conversation. The point is that this town at 10 million debt service would be about as high as we wanted to get. And that would be a significant impact on our taxes. And we have a lot of things, as Bo points out, coming up. I mean, that we need to sit down and say, where do we want to incur our indebtedness? I mean, we've got a new town hall. We have a revised or a rebuilt, reconstructed firehouse. We've got the stone pier, which is not going to be a small number. We have, I just read the Indian Island thing, and I'm looking at 110-foot seawall. Whatever we would participate in that, who knows? But there are a lot of things coming up that are going to be important to this town and are going to cost some money. I mean, we've got, we're looking at a second DPW vehicle or tool tonight, in the second one in 2 months. We need to have a better idea. We've talked about this before, but we need to get an idea about what they have in the DPW inventory, what's its condition, and what we're going to have to replace, because none of this stuff comes cheap. And we need to create a real plan as to what we're looking at. We know that we're coming up to a new pumper truck. We know that we've been asked to extend the number of bays at the firehouse. A new building for the town hall of some description. I mean, not that we're looking at $10 million for a town hall or anything, but we need to look at what is the total that we're going to be looking at, and we need to be able to pick and choose what our priorities are and where we want to spend what our available capital is. And, so I think that that's something we really need to do. And then you brought up the question of our debt service also. And it's something that confused me on Article 5, Justin, the way you wrote it.
Jay, can we stick with this one and then go to that
Okay.
one later?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just we're gonna get confused. I just want us to stay focused on what we're trying to decide today is how we're going to word a warrant article that will go to the people of Shebig. Because either we word it tonight, or we get a petition probably within 48 hours that has other wording on it, and the citizens will call a town meeting. So
Right.
that's really what we're talking about tonight. And I understand, I think that I would hope that we would have a public hearing on this town warrant, and I hope that there's a good debate at town meeting. But tonight, we're just trying to figure out what's the best language that we can come up with that will make a decision the simplest for people. I think your suggestion about, and Mark agreeing, having the something attached, a document so that people can see what they're really talking about, I think that's a great suggestion. But I think we have to try to stay focused on what it is we're trying to do. It's not voting yes or no on anything. It's not debating the issue. The question is, how are we going to word it? Jen, you're next.
Yeah, I have a problem with the fact that we need a town meeting at all right now. And my understanding is the reason that this is being pushed so quickly is because of getting grant funds. I think it's a big, huge risk to the town because, I mean, it's $1 million. If this was $1 million going towards, to fix the stone pier right now, I'd be all in. I am a firm believer that we need to fix what we have. I also understand the need and the want for having better technology and broadband. I think it's important to attract families. I understand that. But what I don't agree with is the town owning an infrastructure that is, look at any technology, it changes and it changes quickly. And I don't see the need to own it when, there's a chance that it's gonna be, obsolete and we're gonna be stuck with this. And there have been proposals in other communities. I don't understand why we're not more, looking at those other communities that have had, that have brought broadband with these companies that are owning it themselves. And I've looked at the sheet that is town owned and company owned that the broadband committee put out, and I don't think the town owned, I don't think that makes a lot of sense for us. And I've tried to weigh it, and I think it makes, if we're going to do this, I think it makes more sense to go with a company that, owns the structure. And if there's a problem with it, they send somebody to fix it immediately. That just seems very cut and dry to me. So I'm having trouble at all with forcing this town meeting all of a sudden on this community, to try to push this. I mean, it's a shame that these funds are may or may not be available, but I don't know that I don't like the way this has all been presented to us, because I don't think it's being presented as straightforward as it could have been. And to try to word a warrant article that makes sense to this community, I don't know that that's possible at this point. I don't think we've been given, I mean, when you have a warrant articles or anything, you go and you have town, like you said, you have meetings beforehand so that people can discuss it and learn about it. And there's so many people on here that have no clue that this is happening. And I think we need more time to do that, to inform everybody. So I don't know, this is a hard one.
Yeah, and it's not really a question about whether the question is, what language do we put on a warrant? And we can say we're not, or we can say we're not going to put anything on, and then we're leaving the language up to somebody in the community to just come forward and do whatever they want, because we have no choice. If the citizens petition, the state of Maine allows that, and they need 33 citizens to vote, to sign petitions in order to call a town meeting. So really, our issue is, and I don't know for a fact that people will do that after tonight if we don't do this, but we will have no control over whatever language they want to put into this. And so that's why I really thought about this, so that there's no question what people are voting on. Because before it was pretty open-ended, and I don't want people to vote, just be able to say, oh, I thought I was voting for such and such. And we have had at least 4 different times the broadband committees come and talk to us. And I do believe that we should have a public hearing again, on this, not just this item, but anything that we put before town meeting. And town meeting then has a debate, we can debate at town meeting, and we can send out whatever we want to all, we could send a packet out to the community. We could send out the broadband report, or, whatever. Individuals, if they don't like it, they can do a private mailing to people. But the question comes back to, if we don't vote to go forward with this, we then have no control over what the language says. So anyway, is there anyone else on the board that has something new they want to bring up before I go to the community, and I'll come back to you? Anybody? Okay. All right. I'm looking to see hands up. I see Mr. Loader.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. It's Christopher Loader. I'm a taxpayer on Shebig Island.
And just to remind you, we're talking about language, not whether we think it's a good idea to have a broadband.
I concur, and what I didn't hear, I heard a little bit of comment on it. So I did write something so that I'm more clear. And first is that I'm just appreciative of the time and effort that the broadband committee has spent putting together this proposal. And, I know that this is, there are very few residents that would disagree that broadband has value, both for business and for entertainment. And so my comments here recognize that there is value. What I think that the town, and specifically the board in its governing role, has to have some clarification on is that this proposal requires the town of Shebig Island to create a municipal public utility. That's what provides the axiom with the right to hang the additional cables, the fiber, on the poles. And I think legally, we have to ask the town, and you should, speak with a lawyer. I think we actually have to ask the town, shall the town of Shebig Island create a municipal utility, which would have to abide by the utility laws in the state of Maine and potentially the federal arena. I think, and the board is, and so that's not actually represented in the ask. It's not represented in what's being presented to the people. And before you can sign a commercial contract, you actually have to have the legal entity in place. I would challenge the board of the broadband committee to look beyond this part of the solution. If we're truly committed to having high-speed bandwidth on the island, which I would personally find valuable, then we need to look beyond municipal ownership. And we need to actually have the most logical developer, consolidated, put forth a bid, a commercial bid that would allow them to own the solution and provide the service. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, anyone else from the audience? Aaron Rue.
Takes a minute there for the mute button to show up. Thank you. I think some good points have been brought out this evening. And I understand that we're talking about language only, but I don't think this article should even really be included at this moment, because as we speak, Long Island is having Consolidated install a fiber optic high-speed broadband system free of charge to all residents. And so a couple of things with this article: it's creating a general obligation bond, not a revenue bond, and yet a lot of the proposal here is saying that the revenues from those who do subscribe will pay for this, but that isn't the fact. The fact here is that you're putting the town on the hook and increasing the debt service by 30% to deal with something that could be free to the town, as it's happening on Long Island, but we're not giving them the chance. So it feels a lot like the cart before the horse, before you even talk about the fact it's a general obligation bond. And the sell on this is that the revenues will pay for it. But somehow I don't see how the numbers are going to work out, because there are no numbers in any of the proposal information, whether you look at the town-owned versus company-owned part of this. So I really think that, honestly, the article shouldn't be there at all at the moment, at least until, as Mr. Loader said, we've received a proposal from an entity that has already agreed to come to the town. That's a fact. And frankly, are willing to bear the burden of this expense. There are tons of expenses we're facing. We simply don't know what the stone wharf is going to be. Indian Point. We've got, DPW expenses coming up. The dredging hasn't been settled out completely. There's talk of a new town hall. And I look at Freeport, which has indebtedness of 480,000, and we're at 3 million. And yeah, maybe we could go to 10 million, but there's been a lot of talk over the years about not turning this into Nantucket. And if you want it to be Nantucket, then keep adding a lot of debt onto the system. So this article got here, and yes, you can talk about the wording, but I don't think general obligation is appropriate in this particular case. And if we're talking about that, I just don't think the article, at least until the town has looked at all of the options, should even be on any kind of a special meeting. I think that this forum limits people's participation, because all we're looking at is a bunch of selectmen. I have no idea who's on here listening to me. And every other meeting, whether it be Yarmouth or Cumberland, they seem to manage to have their forums where you can see other participants that are in the system. And so it feels a little bit more like you're participating instead of talking to a wall at this point of seven people in their homes. I mean, I think we should have the meetings in person too. So I think Article 6 just shouldn't even be part of this. And there are probably other articles here, but that's a lot of money for what this is. And 20 years is an awfully long time in tech world. The iPhone's only been around since 2007. And the internet, in the capacity we use it now, has really been around since the mid-90s. So saddling us with something for 20 years without better discussion, and I know that the Broadband Committee put a lot of work into this, but it's missing a big piece, and that piece is 2 miles from here, Consolidated is installing fiber to the houses for free. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. I'm going to tell you who's on here. Michael Porter, Abby Julian, Adele, Beverly Johnson, Chip Emery, Chris Loader, Donna Colbeth, Jackie Trask, Gloria Brown, Herb Main, Karen Gruhl, Lila Bisharat, Mark Willett, Mary, Matt Ridgway, Paul Baleska, Richard Hackle, and Vale Trainer. And so those are the people, and I'm happy any meeting to do that. If people come and go, but that's who's on here right now. So I was wondering myself, I think Aaron raised a good question about what was happening on Long Island. So I had a long conversation with Mark Green, who was the main negotiator for the broadband on Long Island yesterday. He and the town administrator basically did it. He's the one who came up with the proposals. And so I'll tell you exactly what happened on Long Island. They went to town meeting to ask for a bond of $750,000, very similar language to what we had. And it passed unanimously. They, Long Island's share with Consolidated was going to be $519,000, and Consolidated was going to pay the rest. They got a grant after that, after they went to town meeting, for $388,000, a Connect Main grant. So that lowered, the main cost. And then Consolidated realized when their engineers went to do the final plan, that they had made $199,000 error in their engineering, that they had overestimated by almost $200,000. So at that point, they owed $150,000. The value was $150,000. Long Island thought they would be paying $75,000. At that point, that is when Consolidated said, okay, we'll pick that up because it's still less than what we had budgeted to cost in the first place. That's how they got the free internet. So that, I hope that helps everybody to have that information. And so they feel very blessed, you can imagine. And it was a combination of getting the grant, the fact that the first estimate was high by 200,000, and in the end, Consolidated, instead of doing a 50-50 split, they paid 150, which was less than what they would have paid in the first proposal. And so they are very happy on Long Island. So just, I hope that, again, I hope that helps people to understand that. Okay, Michael Porter has his hand up.
Okay, thank you. People are unhappy with the idea of the island town owning the system. I agree, it's not an ideal arrangement, but the number of companies willing to spend almost $1.5 million for a 0.6% return is very small, like non-existent. They're in business to make money, not to do charity work. We have a different set of priorities. We need better internet, and we're not really looking at the return on investment. The end of 20 years, the fiber would be paid off under our proposal. And contrary to what you might hear, fiber optic cable isn't going away. The electronics will become obsolete. The lasers or LEDs at the ends of the cable will need to be changed out for faster ones. But the fiber's still going to be there, like copper's been there for 100 years. Fiber's going to be there. Any satellites have a capacity problem, as well as not liking trees. Any radio solution has that same problem. There's nothing else, even on the remote horizon, that's going to come anywhere near giving us decent internet anytime soon. And while my internet comes and goes, it's sort of all right. But there are people all over the island whose internet is not all right. And they need it, just like everybody else does nowadays. So Donna spoke of a petition, and there will be an article presented by petition if you guys don't pass this article tonight. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else in the audience who would like to comment on warrant article number 6 and the language that has been proposed? And I don't want to debate whether or not what kind of internet we have or anything. We're trying to stick to this, and we could spend it's the same conversation we have over and over again about internet. Let's let the people of Shebig decide what they want. And we've got to figure out language that will help them at least know what they're voting on. Chris Loader.
I want to, there's obvious tension here because there are folks that want to put a particular plan through and have it voted on. And it's absolutely within the right of individuals or the committee as a whole, broadband committee as a whole, to do that. I hope that what we can actually come up with is not only something that the townspeople of Shebig Island can vote on, but one that they would actually vote yes for, something that would actually solve the broadband a solution or opportunity. And I want to make sure that the committee is hearing that we're not saying no outright. What we're actually saying is that what is being presented is not being presented in a way that enough people are comfortable with, that will actually be the cause of a yes vote. So if we're committed to having broadband, we should equally be committed to getting a yes vote. The harm that could be done by getting a no vote would be that there would have been 2 resoundingly no votes on broadband. And does that mean that we try again in 6 months with a different plan? I don't know, and that's not the purpose of my comment. The purpose of my comment is let's use this as feedback for further refinement so that we can actually get a yes vote, or perhaps get a solution that does not even require a vote and relieves the town and its taxpayers of any liability. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm not advocating one way or the other on whether we have broadband, who provides it or whatever, because I have internet that works at my house. But my feeling is we don't know how the people of Shebig feel about this. And that's the only reason I put it up and let it go up or down. But we can't, there's 5 of us on this board, and I don't think 5 of us should decide. And so far, we've only heard from 3 members of the public. And so that leaves another 330 something people that we haven't heard from. In the last gubernatorial election, there were 330 voters. And I'm sure there were some that didn't vote. So, we're only hearing from a few people. And let's listen to everybody in the community. Bo. And then I'll go to Richard Hackle.
I think we need to move this along. We're just talking about language here. I say let's send it to the town. I agree with Jay and stuff. We don't have enough information to do anything at this point. But if the town wants to vote on it, let's send it to the town to vote on it.
Thank you. Richard Hackle.
His hand's down now.
Can you put your hand back up? Richard, did you want to?
Okay, there we go.
Thank you. Okay, you can hear me now.
Yes, we can. Thank you.
So as from my understanding, being on the committee, there are only 2 real viable contenders to even establish broadband on Shebig. One was Axiom and the other is Consolidated. There were a few other proposals that we got that were just not there. It was more like vaporware or vapor proposals, as far as I could tell from their proposals. Axiom gave us what I thought was a very solid proposal. It has a lot of detail in it. Perhaps you all didn't get to see as much detail as we did. Maybe that's a fault of the committee, but Consolidated didn't respond at all. It was dead air, no response. And it was only at the very last second when they said, oh, well, wait a minute, I think we can come up with something for you. But at this time, I'm not convinced that they would just do it for free. They didn't do it for free with Long Island. Long Island had to go forth and get a bond. And that's what we're asking Shabik to do. We got a proposal from Axiom. They responded in a timely manner. And we're asking just to vote for a bond, just like Long Island voted for a bond. And I don't know what to do with Consolidated at this point. They're now saying, oh, well, we can do it. We've been trying to work against some deadlines with, government funding, and that's been pushing us along. And we also, not only that, but we need to just push this along. The longer we wait, the longer we don't have decent broadband. So that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So one thing that I've heard, if this does go forward, if we actually ever get to vote on it, that it would be really helpful to have as much written information available to the public as possible. I think that everyone here agrees with that. So any of that, so that would be one thing that could happen. We could put it in a packet. Anyone else in the board want to speak? Mark?
This is a scenario question, if you will, so excuse me for that. But if this proposal went to the taxpayers and it was going to go forward because it got enough votes to pass, would it be Justin, would it be the town of Shabig that would actually be applying for the possible available grant money from state and federal agencies?
That's a good question.
Yes, I believe that will work. And if I believe that's the way that it would work. Yes.
Okay. And I'm not saying that this is going to pass and go forward with the people of Shabig, because I don't know that it will do that. And I certainly don't know if grants will be secured, because that's a very dangerous thing to plan on. But if grants were secured somehow, it would how would that work for lowering would that be able to lower our bond money? Or it certainly wouldn't be able to lower the term of the length of the bond. Could someone explain that to me?
I think Michael could explain that, but my understanding is we would only borrow what would be necessary. So we would wait to see if we received a grant, and we would lower the amount that we would actually borrow by the amount we needed to complete the project. Michael has his hand up. Maybe he can explain that better than I.
Thank you.
You want Michael to talk, Donna?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, Mark, it's basically the more money we get in grants, the less money has to be borrowed. And we keep reading about more and more grant money being available in the state. And we think, from conversations with Connect Maine and with the Island Institute, more or less Broadband Coalition, that we have a pretty good shot at getting what grant money there is. So yeah, but the short answer to your question is, the more grant money we get, the less we borrow. Is that where you were going?
Yeah, thank you. So it really could be a timing issue, is what I should have said. Thank you.
Yeah, it is a timing issue. That's there's about to be a grant opening in November sometime. We don't get in on that, Lord knows when the next one's going to be. That's where we're coming from.
How Mark Green described it to me was, they voted at town meeting, and as I said, they had a unanimous vote to appropriate, to authorize borrowing that money in the event that they could apply for a grant. And so then they were able to apply for a grant. So they never actually issued any bond, but they had the ability to do it. And theirs was 750. They are a much smaller island. The houses are more compact than Shebig. I've got some things in the chat here that I just want to pass along that I'm hearing, that Axiom will assist in grant writing, that they will help the town with the grant writing. Chris Loder's written, please make sure the board understands the legal requirements and liability for the town of Shebig to become a municipal utility. And does this require direct approval of the citizens? And all the proposals and a 7-page committee report and recordings of all of the meetings are on Beverly's website for anyone who hasn't seen all of the proposals and the committee report and wants to hear recordings of meetings, public meetings that have been, where presentations have been made. So that's all I can find in the chat box. I'm not good at this maneuvering business. So I'm going to go back to the audience, give you one more shot if somebody wants to talk about this, and then I'm going back to the board and we need to move on. Because we're basically debating whether or not we should hire, whether we should have Axiom or Consolidated, rather than actually saying, what do we want people to vote on, or do we want to let them? Chip Emery.
Unmute. Hello. I hearing people talk, and I have heard for a number of years people talk about the two questions that keep coming up today. And one is ownership and one is technology. I don't know everybody's background that's on this here, but I certainly am not able to make a legal or a technical assessment of how long this will last, what the likelihood will be in the future, what town ownership involves. And I think we have to be careful of opining on these things. Again, some people may really be qualified to answer these questions. But I think that's one danger we had. And I had made a suggestion 2 years ago to the town to use some of the money they had to get an actual legal opinion and an actual technical opinion on these same two questions, just as we will when we go down to look at how the wharf needs to be. We get professional advice. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chip. I'm going to ask Mark Willett, because he has, Axiom is on several islands where I have friends who down east, and I know that they are served Axiom and by Axiom. And I'm wondering, could he address Chris Loder's question about the public utility? For example, on the Cranberries or whichever island you might be on, or small coastal towns, do they have, how do they handle the idea of the public utility? If you could help us with that, that would be great. Does he have to put his hand up for you to call on him?
He doesn't. I can just bring him in. I just wanted to make sure he wanted to say something. That's all.
Yeah. And if he doesn't,
Okay.
if you don't, Mark, if you feel free to say, no, I don't have anything to say. Oh, his hand's up now. Okay. How do they handle this issue about public utilities in these small towns down east?
Essentially, what you do is you go through a process with the PUC of being registered as a pole licensee. And that gives you, as the community, access or the ability to apply to Consolidated and the utility CMP to put a cabling on the existing utility poles. It's not much else to it other than that. There's not really, you can enter into a process to become a actual public utility, but that really is typically reserved for multiple communities working together, not for a single community. So the systems in place in Cranberries and others, and a bunch of others that are coming online this year, are not going to require any legal work to make them, to ensure that the town is a public utility necessarily. That is a step that you can take, and as I think Chip mentioned, and it is a possibility that you can go through, but I don't think it's necessary. I know it's not necessary because the communities that we're working in haven't gone through any formal assessment of what it would cost to be a public utility. It's a very simple process. It's just like being owning your own wastewater infrastructure or any of the other publicly owned utilities that you currently have. So it's not particularly a high bar, but most communities have not proceeded in that way.
Would that be set up like an enterprise fund or something? I mean, like
It's typically a revenue bond, which is what we typically advise people to consider. And working just like it would with a wastewater treatment, right? I would use that as an example, and I don't want to get I don't want to get too far down the weeds of the town administrator's job here. But however that typically what the model is that the subscribers to the system would pay for the system. That's what you have typically in a wastewater. You pay for the amount of water you use, and this is similar to that model.
okay, so kind of like when Cumberland sewered, when they put the sewer in, the users paid for it, and then people actually who were on the line had readiness to serve, or whatever you call it. But it was segmented, so it'd be similar, I guess, to that kind of thing. All right, I don't know if that answers the question, but I'm going to ask one more time. Is there anybody else in the audience? Okay, seeing none. All right, the board. Is there anyone else who wants to say anything about this? All right, Chris?
I just would like, before we vote, that the motion get reiterated again to be more clear as to what we're voting on.
Okay, I can read it again. This is what's on the table right now. And Justin has a copy of this, Chris, and I can email it to you if it goes. Well, it probably should be in there whether it goes or doesn't go. To see if the town will vote to authorize the issuance of up to $975,000 in general obligation bonds or notes of the town for the purpose of financing the town's share of costs of developing and building a town-owned fiber optic broadband network capable of delivering internet access to all residents and businesses in the town, designed, implemented, operated, and maintained by Axiom Technologies as described in the report from the Shebig Broadband Committee, date September 30th, 2021. The details of such borrowing, including provisions that the bonds may be prepaid or subject to call for redemption with or without premium, and the dates, maturities, denominations, and interest rates to be determined by the Board of Selectmen. Debt service will be paid by Axiom Technologies, not by the town's taxpayers. And the rest of the language would be just the way it was in the packet. Okay, is that good? Okay, all right, so I don't see anybody else's hand up. I'm going to call roll call vote. We'll start with Mr. Beaupre.
Let the town vote for it. Yes.
Okay, Ms. Beleska,
No.
Mr. Corson,
No.
Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
Ms. Damon. Yes, I believe the town needs to vote on this one way or the other. All right, that's 3-2. All right, let's move on to consider various warrant articles for a future town meeting. So now we're actually looking at all of the other items that are in the draft warrant here that we have in our packet. The first two are sponsored by the planning board. I hope that everyone on the board had a chance to read those. One is some kind of housekeeping topics having to do with zoning. One of the big ones that I saw that was a change is they added shoreland, whatever you call it, where they fix the shoreland, like they did up to the east end point or whatever. That was on one list. But other than that, most of it, I think, is what you call housekeeping. And the second one is to just include the Shebig Sea Level Rise Vulnerability Assessment. That was a study that was done a few years ago in conjunction with COG, and they want to just attach that to the comprehensive plan. And I asked that somebody from the planning board be here in case somebody had a question. I can't see who, for some reason, when you share your screen, Justin, I can't see who else is here.
Yeah, I can see there's nobody raising their hand at the moment.
Nobody, okay. So
I just, if I could just make clear, Shebig is different than most municipalities where the planning board has the authority to put items on the warrant. They requested that these get put on the warrant at the last town meeting. I neglected to include them. So if you hold a special town meeting, they really should be put on there. So it's really a formality that you review these because they should be put to the town meeting for their decision.
Okay. So does anybody have any questions about these? Anybody on the board? Okay, anybody in the audience? Can you see anybody with a hand up? Okay, so let's vote on those two and just put them to bed. I think that would be just easy. All right. Oh, Jay, you have a question?
I'd like to make a motion that we put Article 2 and Article 3 on whatever town meeting we have next.
Okay, it's been moved. Is there a second? Mark has seconded it. Thank you. All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, I'm going to do a roll call. Ms. Beleska,
Yes.
Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
Mr. Corson,
Yes,
Mr. Dyer,
Yes,
and Ms. Damon's yes. Okay, so we're going to move those two. The next one is to see if the town will vote to authorize the Board of Selectmen to enter into permanent drainage easements agreements with Gregory and Jennifer Melconian, trustees of the Jennifer D. Melconian Trust, map 10I3, lot 68A. Greg Melconian, trustee, map 10I3, lot 68C, and Julie Doughty, map I3, lot 69, and map lot 103, lot 71. So those would be the areas that would be included. A copy of the easement agreements is available for review at the town office on the Town of Shebig Island website. And just as a way of explanation, we have in our packet a drawing of the work that would be done. And the idea is, if you think about in the spring, the winter, when we have big rainstorms, there's always the South Road, which is heavily traveled, in the area between Fenderson Road and Secret Road, floods. And so it's very icy there and in the winter. And so this would be to do some work that would alleviate that problem. So somebody else can explain it. If you can explain it better, feel free. Mark.
Don, I'd like to make a motion to include Article 4 on our special town meeting warrant.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion from the board? Jay?
do we know what this is going to cost?
That would be another issue.
Yeah,
This
the
is
answer is
only-
no.
Pardon me?
The answer is no. At this time, we don't.
And so this is only saying that we could actually have a drainage easement. That doesn't mean we have to actually implement it. Anyone in the audience? Okay, seeing no one. It's been moved and seconded. Mr. Corson,
Yes.
okay. And Miss Valeska,
Yes.
Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
and Mr. Dyer,
Yes.
and Miss Damon is yes. What happens is you guys move, it moves around on my screen. That's why I'm calling people in different order, because sometimes I'm seeing somebody in one place and another. So it's unanimous. All right, the next one is number 5, to see if the town will vote to authorize the issuance of up to $112,000 in general obligation bonds or notes of the town, or in the alternative, to enter into a lease purchase agreement to finance up to $112,000 or combination thereof as determined by the Board of Selectmen for the purpose of financing the town's purchase of a new backhoe, with the details of such borrowing or lease purchase financing, including provisions that the bonds may be prepaid or subject to call for redemption with or without premium, and the dates, maturities, denominations, and interest rates to be determined by the Board of Selectmen, and to authorize the Board of Selectmen to sell, trade, or otherwise dispose of the current backhoe, a case 580 SN, in the best interest of the town. Do we have a motion or a conversation? First of all, do we have a motion? Bo?
I move to approve Article 5 to authorize the town to issue the issuance of up to $112,000 in general obligation bonds.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, there's not a second. So let's talk about this a little bit. Mark had his hand up.
The reason I didn't second that, Bo, just so you and everybody knows, is we have one backhoe that works very well. The one that is in question was one that we purchased that had a faulty transmission put back into it at some point, I guess. So I guess my druthers would be that I think, Justin, correct me if I'm wrong, we had an estimate of being able to put a transmission back into that machine for about, I'm gonna say $30,000. Is that still accurate in your opinion?
Yes.
My-
There's about, well, let me just clarify that there's about $23,000 worth of work to do, and we currently owe the vendor $6,000 for the work they've already done to get it to the point where they could tell us what was wrong with it.
Okay. My point is, if we really feel that we need a second or a backup backhoe, that we try to scrape up the money with existing reserve money, existing money in our budget, or we come up with an amount of money to finish off the balance of getting that transmission rebuilt and have that machine be the primary yard machine. That's my druther. So if we can come up with, let's say, $15,000 and we need another 15,000, then let's ask the people for their permission to take 15,000 out of the undesignated fund balance. That's my point. Thank you.
All right, so we have 2 different ideas on the table here. Jay?
Some time ago, we talked about getting a list of what equipment we had, what its condition was, and what we were going to be looking to and getting, and maintaining the equipment we need. We've never seen the list. The fire department gives us a list of, we know what the schedule of equipment replacement looks like. That's what we need for the DPW, so that we can start to make some decisions, as opposed to every 2 months getting a request for another 120 grand for another piece of equipment.
I have a list put together. It's just waiting for the budget process. So you will see it as we go through the budget process this year. I've collected all that information. I have recommendations.
Maybe send it out ahead of time.
Yeah, certainly. I was just waiting for the budget processes. There isn't an agenda item to discuss it, so.
Jen?
I've been told that the backhoe that's in use now is a good backhoe. I think we're a pretty small place, and that when push comes to shove, we don't need 2 backhoes necessarily. I think that to fix the existing one, is an okay idea, but my guess would be that I think it's better to just get rid of that one, or sell it for scrap, or whatever they do with backhoes at this point. And the next time it comes around that this one needs to be serviced, or needs to be fixed, or is beyond repair, then we look at getting a new backhoe. But I don't think this small community needs more than one. I understand the whole part. Well, one guy's doing one thing and the other guy's doing another and another. And what happens if, the backhoe breaks in the wintertime and we need to get sand and salt, put in the trucks? I think that there are enough pieces of equipment on this island that, somebody could step up and maybe rent theirs, or, Bo, we could borrow yours, or, if that was really necessary. I think it's a lot of money for this town to have 2 backhoes, and I am not in favor of spending that amount of money for a new backhoe. So.
Thanks, Jen. I have a quick question, and then I'm going to go to Bo. What's the age of the backhoe that we have now?
You have to give me a second to bring that up, okay?
Sure. We could ask Mark to sing while we're waiting.
If I remember, I thought it was a 2015.
The new one? I mean, the one that actually works.
I don't remember.
Or
the exact date.
is it, or the broken one?
The broken one, I believe, is 2015.
I'm wondering, see, I'm asking about the other one that we're actually using, that isn't broke, that I saw out in the road today.
I'm having trouble getting into my drive at the office, so I can't bring up my spreadsheet at the moment. But I believe Bo is correct on the one that's broken, and the other one's older than that by a few years. It's not that much older.
Did we buy?
Might be a 2012.
So we bought it since we became a town, the first one, so both of those we've bought since we became a town.
That's my understanding, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, obviously, if it's not before 2000, yeah, yes.
Okay,
Simple
Bo,
math.
and then I'll make a comment after Bo.
I think the rest of that backhoe is in good condition that we can rebuild the transmission for that instead of going for a new one. Unless the mechanic goes, no, the rest of it's going, whatever. I'm not a mechanic. So, as far as the having two, it's convenient to say that you can borrow somebody else's stuff. Not always convenient to let somebody borrow your stuff. And the last thing is, I thought to discuss anything that we had to have a motion and the motion seconded before we start discussing it. Just
Well, yeah, that's a good point. Mark?
I'll go ahead and, I'm sorry, Bo. I'll go ahead and make a motion that we direct our town administrator to relook into having the transmission rebuilt on the 2015 case backhoe, and also look at any available monies that we would be able to direct towards that repair, and give us a report back along with an answer of a needed balance that we would have to ask town meeting for.
Is there a second to Mark's motion?
should we put the warrant right now to like 30? And then ask for that, or up to 30? If we can't find whatever?
Look,
That way we're not wasting time that way.
Could I have permission to ask a question, Donna?
sure.
Justin, would you have any idea of any available monies that we could put towards this that would be at our access at this point?
I think we could wipe out the rest of the DPW vehicle reserve, which is about 7,000. Other than that, you'd have to take the remainder out of your contingency. There isn't any other line that would allow that. And I'd have to double check on the exact language in the DPW reserve line for a repair versus a purchase. I had come up with a list of ways that you could finance it if you were going to go the lease purchase arrangement, but I don't have it for a repair cost available right now.
Okay, so if we were to structure a warrant article to propose for a vote, would it need to say $20,000 or $25,000?
That really depends on your comfort level. You could put it at the 30, which is the full amount of the repair, and then just only basically authorize me to spend what we couldn't find elsewhere. I mean, that's still in your control after the town meeting. It could just be an up to $30,000 amount, and then whatever we could find as we went through, we could just reduce how much we actually spent. Does that make sense?
Well, we still don't have a second on that, on Mark's idea. So we're still open to another motion, I suppose. And so I'm going to throw out, we're already out of Robert's rules, so I might as well throw out another one. The possibility of taking the money out of undesignated fund balance. And would we have money in that to take, a certain amount of money out of the undesignated fund balance? Mark?
Okay, and I would like to add or amend to my motion to include in Article 5 to ask the voters for permission to take up to $30,000 from undesignated fund balance for this repair of the transmission.
I'll second.
Okay, so both seconded. So Christine, do you have the beginning of that motion so that we can now start having a serious discussion about it?
I'm assuming it reads just like Article 5 does on the special town meeting warrant, except that it says up to 30,000 instead of up to 112,000.
Well, this would be coming out of undesignated fund balance as opposed to bonding. right?
That's correct. We would eliminate all that bond language, and it would be a lot simpler. Wouldn't have that financial statement below it or any of that. It would just say, authorize the Board of Selectmen or just authorize the spending of $30,000 out of the undesignated fund balance for the repair of the Public Works backhoe. It would be something very similar to that.
Okay.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Let's talk about that from the board. Hear any comments, and then I'll go out to the audience. Anybody have a comment or a question about Mark's motion that Bo seconded? Okay, seeing none. Anybody in the audience have a question or comment about that motion? All right, seeing none. Let's call, Jay?
Sorry, I generally don't have a problem with getting equipment fixed, but I go back to, I would like to see the list that Justin says he's got so that we can look at what our overall requirements are going to be before we just start putting more money to work without having an idea about what the whole picture is.
All right, so I guess that my question would be, well, what is the risk of, I mean, in order to have a town meeting, do we have to have the language exact tonight? I mean, if for this to go forward?
It depends on, basically depends on your comfort level. The warrant article is final when you sign it. So the way that I would do it is if you all vote for it tonight, I will write it as though you're signing it tonight, and then you would come in. So I would have to put the final language together, and before you put your signatures on it, you would be able to review that exact language. But it's basically just however Natalie wants the sentence to be structured to get to the meaning of whatever you want. I generally draft the articles and then send them to Natalie, and then she edits them for the way she wants them to look.
So at what point, what's the date that we go by to have a town meeting? Is it based on when we sign it or when we vote to approve it?
You decide when you want to hold the town meeting. That's your choice. You pick the date.
Oh, so then we don't
I just
have to
need
have-
30 days from
Well,
the
that's what I
date that
mean.
you approve the warrant. It has to be 30 days after. It has to be
Okay,
posted for 30 days.
Okay, that's my question. Okay, so what's 30 days from now?
Is it November 20th? Is it November 20th?
I think it was November 20th was a Saturday. Is that right?
Yes, because we have 31 days this month. Yeah, so it would be the 20th if you were going to hold them on a Saturday. I think that's the first earliest you could hold it. I don't think we would be able to, well, certainly we can't get it posted that fast. So it would have to be sometime after that.
Okay.
And that following weekend is Thanksgiving. So I mean, you're really into December.
Okay, so like the first weekend in December. What's that date?
Yeah, like the 4th. If you wanted it on a Saturday, I mean, you can do it in the evening. It's up to whatever you want to do.
Well, how does the rest of the board feel? I mean, where do we want, we haven't voted on this yet, but so maybe we should vote on it and then talk about it, because it may go down and then we've wasted time. So, okay, so if no one has anything else they want to say about this backhoe, then let's call for a vote, and then we can talk about what it means about the town meeting and getting more information. All right, so Mr. Corson,
No,
Ms. Bleska,
No,
Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yeah,
I guess I'm yes. So we would move this on to town meeting with the idea that we would be asking for it to come from undesignated fund balance up to 30,000. But if we find money other places in the public works budget or in our capital budget, it would be, use first. Is that right? I see Mr. Poirier nodding.
Yes,
his
that's
head.
correct.
So I guess, okay, let's keep going on this. So we've already talked about 6. So I guess we're at the point to set a date and time for the town meeting. So how do people feel about nighttime versus Saturdays? Bo,
I think warrant article 6 is going to be a controversial talk. And I think it'll be really hard to put that in the evening.
I think you're right. I mean, I agree with you. How do the rest of you feel? Do you think Saturday morning at 9 o'clock is better than nighttime?
Yes.
Okay, Jen? And I think that we want to try to have this be in person. That would be my feeling, that, you know, unless we've got a situation where we are, you know, there's some kind of a real epidemic down here of, you know, COVID, that would be a different story. And if worse comes to worse, and we feel like we can't spread out enough, that we don't want to leave people out of this conversation. So if we can't, if it would be too many people for the hall, we could do it in the rec center. We had our first town meeting there. The acoustics aren't good, but we could do it. It would work. Not great, but it would work. But we can't do it outside in December. Bo.
I move that we set the date for the special town meeting for December 4th, 2021.
At a time, at 9 o'clock?
At 9 o'clock, 9 a.m.
Okay, is there a second to that?
We need a location too. You have to decide that now.
Are we gonna do the rec center or the hall? What do you guys want to do?
Rec center.
Okay. Everybody okay with the rec center? Well, we'll find out when you vote. But
Yes.
yeah. I mean, I think that's our best shot, is doing the rec center. Mark,
Who has seconded?
Nobody.
I'll second.
oh, sorry.
Just checking.
Yeah, I'm starting to lose it. I've had a hard day today. Okay, all right, so can we read that back again, Chris?
Motion moved by Bo to set the date for the special town meeting for December 4th, 2021 at 9 a.m. at the rec center, seconded by Mark Dyer.
Okay, let's take a vote. Mr. Corsi.
Jen had a question, Donna.
Oh, sorry, Jen, you had a question? I'm sorry.
I
didn't
did, that's
see.
my question is that the broadband committee was eager to have us have a town meeting because of the grant monies that were becoming available in November. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's a good question about, it may be that's just when they're announced. I don't know when the deadline would be. If they haven't even been announced, there has to be a certain amount of time for the deadline. Is there somebody on the broadband committee who could, Michael Porter's got his hand up. Thank you, Jen, for coming up with that idea. Michael, can you bring Michael up?
Yeah, okay. We don't know at the moment when that grant is going to be announced, but it's normally a 45-day window. So I think we're looking at a deadline like end of December for deadline for submission.
Okay, so
think-
you would be covered by then?
Yeah, if we have the meeting on the 1st of December, yes, I think so.
If by chance, yeah, okay, good. All right, thank you, Jen. That was a good catch there.
Yeah, well done.
Anybody else have a comment before we vote? All right, I'm gonna start with Bo. Oh, no, here's Jay's back. Jay,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Bo,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I'm yes, so it's unanimous. All right, the next question, the next item on the agenda is to discuss the possibility of a waiting room shed on the stone wharf. And there's been some question about placing something in the area where the other shed was that we used to have there. And especially because people are, having to wait in line for the boat, and oftentimes there are, people in the summer when it's really hot. Also, there's the harbor master, and so this was brought to us as a suggestion. And what are your thoughts on it? Bo?
I don't see the reason why we need one. The only reason we're waiting outside the boat right now is so that we're not confined on the boat for any more than we have to. So now we want to build a structure to confine people in before they go on the boat. So that's my thought.
Okay. Anybody else on the board before I go to the public? Okay, anybody in the public would like to, I'm sorry, Jen.
I was wondering, this was brought to us from CTC. And
Yes.
I was wondering if, I'm not in favor of it just because I'm in hopes that CTC, as when things get better, that we won't have to stand out in the freezing cold wind and rain and whatever to wait for the ferry, that's gonna eventually be lifted. And I wondered about, can you put a structure on the wharf? What about, is that something that can actually be done with as far as I just drew a blank, but
Yeah, I don't think that's the question. We've had structures there before. The whole end of the freight shed, the whole end of the wharf at one time had a coal shed with hundreds of tons of coal in the end of it. And we did have that little harbor master one that was there, which was helpful for people. Pardon me?
what happened to that one?
It got hit by a snowplow, or I don't know what happened. It fell apart. It was something that had been moved around from 2 or 3 places.
It didn't
And-
get pushed.
Pardon me?
It didn't get pushed overboard.
No, it didn't. No, the town made a decision to get rid of it because it had, it kind of had lived out its life because of, moving it around in different places. Before we go to, I'm going to go to Matt Ridgway in a minute because they brought this idea to us. I had Mark go down, asked Mark if he would go down and measure down at Chandler's Cove to see how big that area was that they have there on the wharf. Did you get a chance, Mark?
Sorry, I really did not. I feel bad about that.
That's all right. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, that's okay. I understand the request, and I understand some of the reasoning that CTC has given for not allowing people to get on the boat early, and maybe some of it is safety and Coast Guard regulations and health reasons and so on and so forth. I'm not prepared tonight to make a motion to direct our town administrator to look into putting a shed on the wharf. Doesn't mean I'm never going to be thinking about something like that. But I'm sorry to say I'm just not quite prepared to make that motion for tonight.
Okay. Matt, can you bring Matt Ridgway up, Justin?
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, so this came from just some of our observations that we've had over the past year or year and a half or so. And, both communications from our passengers that use our service and communications from people that are, just the general public that are taking other services, whether it's, the fog water taxi or people waiting down on the pier for people to come and pick them up in their private boats. There's no shelter down there. So if there's bad weather, if it's super hot, people have no place to wait except out in the open. Those of us who don't have cars necessarily that we can wait in down there. So we've just observed that over the past year and a half. The ferry has traditionally been sort of the waiting area for that public place that's on the stone wharf. The ferry cannot, unfortunately, continue to be that waiting place, and it's never going to be that waiting place again. The Coast Guard has been much more involved in our operations since COVID started, and they've made it clear in no uncertain terms that we cannot have the public have access to the ferry without our full complement of crew on board. So that would mean at least a captain and a deckhand were on board anytime the public had access to the ferry. So things have kind of changed over the past couple of years, and where I think CTC's communication was coming from the town was mostly from an observational point of view, that since we are no longer able to offer our ferries as the sort of de facto shelter on the stone wharf, that perhaps the town could, and CTC would be happy to participate or help in any way, whether it's financially or transporting something over here in putting up some kind of structure on the stone wharf to allow for that kind of shelter, because we recognize that we have been traditionally the sort of the shelter in this public place. I don't think that there's a lot of comparable piers or wharfs that service islands, in this state or elsewhere where this is a really the public facility, the hub of transportation for the island, where there is literally no shelter of any kind on the wharf. So we're eager to help, but if the town decides to go, not to do it, we're not able to provide that shelter as we used to.
So Matt, I have a quick question. So you said you'd be willing, or not you, but CTC is willing to cost share and transport materials and equipment to do this?
Absolutely. We're happy to help in any way that we can. If we we know that we are a business that benefits from the access to the Stone Pier, and if we can help our customers by helping to share the cost of this, helping to provide the transportation for anything that comes over to the island, we're happy to help in any way that we can.
So I guess I'm kind of with Mark that I'm not sure that I think we need more of a specific proposal. My suggestion, I guess, would be, and we've got 2 or 3 hands up here, so I'm going to go to them too. But my first thoughts is that we authorize the town administrator to sit down with CTC and kind of create some kind of a proposal to come back and talk to us about it. Because I've been to almost all the inhabited islands on the coast, and Matt is right that everyone has someplace like this on a wharf. And so, we can talk about it later, but I don't think we're prepared to make a decision tonight. All right, I saw Mark's hand up and then Jen's, and then I've got a couple of people in the audience.
Just very quickly, you may want to just, I'm sorry I didn't get that measurement and the design down at Chandler's Cove Wharf, but you may want to just go down there, measure it, take a look at it. It's probably adequate for what you're thinking about for a consideration of a proposal. And as far as placing it on the wharf, we used to have an old plywood building up there that I think maybe Med Bowen and those guys threw together at one point from the town of Cumberland that sat there for a number of years when we started the town. And I don't know that it was used or not used, but all of a sudden it just disappeared or was hauled off or something. Thank you.
Jen?
Matt mentioned that the Coast Guard wouldn't allow, passengers to wait unless there was a captain and a deckhand. And I would just ask that maybe the CTC could look into just having your captain and your deckhand come, a few minutes earlier so that people could get on. It just seems like that would be an easy fix. Maybe, 15 minutes before boat time. So, thanks.
Okay, we have Adele and then Michael Porter in the audience.
Hi, everybody. I love everything that's been discussed about this shed issue, and so many wonderful points have already been made. And all I wanted to add was that given the restrictions that are now placed on CTC as a result of COVID, and couple that with the demographic of Shebig, we have a lot of very wonderful elders who would really benefit from having a shed. They can't necessarily sit in their cars and then whisk themselves over. So if you can move forward with a shed, I think you would benefit a great majority of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Adele. Michael Porter.
Okay, I was on, I think, every Stone Wharf committee that ever was until we stopped having separate Stone Wharf committees. And the one constant of all that time was that real estate on the wharf is very valuable stuff, used for different purposes at different times, unloading traps, unloading gear, unloading lumber. And I'd be very hesitant to tie up even a small piece of it. It's not a very big facility and it's used for so many different things, but anything you do to take away either any face of it or anything on the surface makes problems. That's all I want to say.
Thank you, Michael. I had the same concern when I first heard about this, and I went up there and looked at it, and there is a space that is adjacent to where there's the power grid, whatever you call that panel thing up there, that you could put something that would not be in the way, because I had the exact same concern because I was on all those committees too. And but when I went up there and looked at it and kind of paced it out, I could see how you could actually do that. And it's about, as Mark said, it's about, that other building was there for years and really didn't get in the way. But anyway, all right. So anybody else in the audience before I go back to the board? All right, nobody. Oh yes, Matt Ridgway.
Thanks, Donna. So I would just reiterate that where this request is coming from is not necessarily from us on the ferry or our captains and crew seeing our passengers, a big majority of our passengers having to wait in the elements to get on board the ferry. But the Stone Wharf is the hub of transportation for the whole island, whether it's coming from water taxis or whether it's coming from private boats or whatever. It's a public place that currently has no shelter at all. And I think the whole community could stand to benefit from this. CTC currently has our boarding times 10 minutes prior to departure. Our crew is expected to be on the ferry at least 15 minutes prior. You know, we can make that a half hour prior, and we would still have people that were there very early for our boat. So I don't think that that's necessarily the solution. So whether you guys decide to move forward with this or not is up to you. We're happy to help if you guys allow us to. So thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So I guess we're back to the question is, do we want, I don't think there's anybody here ready to vote on this or make a proposal tonight. My suggestion would be that the board authorize the town administrator to sit down with Matt Ridgway and any other interested people. Maybe there's somebody on the board who would like to sit down. Bo's got his hand up. You want to do that, Bo? Okay, let me just finish. So that they could come back with something specific, because right now we don't have anything specific. So, Bo.
If we do go ahead and do something down there, I think we need to make the shed either movable or easily movable, because the stone pier needs either repair or you know, there's going to be some significant changes down there. So we need to make the shed so it's able to move.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I think that's you know, that's a no-brainer, because we don't know what's going to happen with any kind of reconstruction or whatever is going to happen down there. So whatever it would be something that could be moved and incorporated into a bigger design, into whatever the final solution is. Bo.
So I would like to move the town administrator, get with CTC and come up with a plan for a structure of some sort, and come up with either some kind of bill so that we can at least talk about it during budget.
Okay, is there a second to that?
Second.
It's been seconded. Moved and seconded. Any more discussion on the part of the board? Okay, I see a hand in the audience. Lila Bisharat. You're muted, Lila. There we
Thank
go.
you very much, Donna. I really appreciate the design issues that are being talked about, especially Bo's point about it, and you underlined that, Donna, being a movable, adaptive structure. And I would hope that the town administrator and the CTC would reach out to a few people in this community who have some experience with some structures. One of them, I think, is Cap Leonard. He and I have had discussion about that. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Good suggestion. All right, so let's, I'm just making sure there's nobody else in the audience with a hand up. Any more comments from the board? All right, seeing none. Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Ms. Valeska?
No.
Mr. Beaupre?
Yes.
Mr. Dyer?
Yes.
And Ms. Damon is yes, so it's 4-1 to ask the town administrator to sit down with CTC and come back with some kind of a concrete proposal regarding some kind of a shed. That doesn't mean we're going to do it. It doesn't mean we're not going to do it, but we will be revisiting it. All right, the next thing on the agenda is to accept with regrets the resignation of Aaron Julian from the Broadband Committee. And the only reason I put this,
Donna, you skipped one.
I did?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I did. I turned my page. I'm trying to get out of here, Bo. Okay, sorry. 21-120. To consider a proposal from CV Mahar Engineers regarding the Chandler's Cove Landing Road. And this is to consider a proposal. I don't know that we're ready for a motion on this. I think we need to discuss it before we have a motion. So would someone like to start the discussion? Mark.
I appreciate, Justin. I think probably it was your efforts to start looking at any issues with Chandler's Cove Road, which, you know, certainly has its shortcomings, if you will. But this proposal looks excessive to me and probably unnecessary for what we will end up accomplishing with Chandler's Cove Road, even if we repave the road similar to what it is right now. So I'm not going to be willing to consider backing this proposal from CV Mahar, but I would like to thank them and any efforts to bring it forward to us.
Thank you, Mark. Anyone else on the board have a comment before I go to the audience? Well, I'll make a comment while you're all thinking about it. We've talked about this for a long time. And I have to say, when I looked at their proposal and just the engineering on this road, where I think we're only talking about increasing 2 or 3 feet for $25,000 for engineering. To me, that seemed like it was way out of proportion to what the project would be. And, you know, I'm thinking we hired a Baker and Associates for a project at the Hook for less than 20,000. And they actually, and CV Mahar's didn't even consider their own survey. It talked about our survey. And so I guess if we really are serious and we want to widen that road, I would ask that we get another estimate from another engineering company. Anyone else on the board before I go to the audience? Bo.
I agree with you, Donna. I think the cost, it seems high to me for the minimal work. And I think we need to look at a different, go see another engineering firm.
My thought was we have a list of vetted, we did this several years ago, so that we didn't have to go out for bid on all these. We have a list, and one is Goral Palmer. I know they've done things for us in the past. If in fact, at the end of the discussion, if we decide we want to get more information, I would suggest going to them or one of the other engineers on our list and seeing if they were interested. Anyone in the audience have a comment about the Chandler's Cove Landing Road? That is the road that goes from the South Road to the Wharf. It was laid out in 3 different sections. One is 25 feet wide, one is 40 feet wide, and another one might be 20 feet wide. So it has a lot of issues, those kinds of issues as well. So what's the pleasure of the board? Jen?
I was just wondering, because it has a lot to do with people's land and, you know, homeowners, would that be part of the reason that it's more costly?
No, because we'd have to pay extra for all of that work.
Right. If you guys wanted to move forward, just keep in mind that on top of the engineering cost, there's potential for significant legal fees and a timeline, which would be 18 to 24 months before we could do anything over there. So just keep that in mind as you're going through the budget process and whatnot.
So what's the pleasure of the board? I don't see anybody in the audience wanting to weigh in on this. Bo and then Jay.
So without going ahead with this survey or this right here, does this mean we can't even pave it?
No, we can still pave it. We can still pave the part that's paved right now.
So we just can't change the width or anything as far as the road?
Yeah.
Okay.
And we can move I mean, it's already underway about moving the telephone poles. That has nothing to do with this proposal. And so maybe just even the telephone poles will make, it may make a difference down there. One thing to know, just in case some of you don't know, that the town actually owns part of the road, in front of Florence and Herb Riches, where people park their cars there. That's actually owned by the town. So the town could widen that section of the road on their own property if they decided that they wanted to do something with that section. There's actually a lot of land there that I can't remember off the top of my head how big it is, but so it would be across from the old Rich property where Danny Todd lives. Bo and then Jay.
I think we need to ask the town administrator. I move that we ask the town administrator to either ask Sewer and Mahar to look at their numbers and look at another engineering firm for a number. I think it would be vital information if we do a move ahead with anything down there.
Is there a second to Bo's motion? Okay, I don't see a second. Jay, you had your hand up a minute ago.
Yeah, I think we ought to just table this for the time being. If we want to pave what's already paved, we can do that. And we can take a look at it as we go forward. But if we're talking about something that's going to get involved and take a couple of years of legal issues, I'm not quite sure. I think we need a better idea about what we want to do. And, if we need to repave it, and I don't think the paving's in that bad a shape down there. So I would just say, let's just keep our eyes on it and move on.
We've had a lot of complaints about the paving down there. Actually, I think paving probably that road's not in great shape. It was supposed to be done 4 years ago.
Okay.
Jen?
So we can pave it.
So the whole point of hiring CV Mahar in the beginning, I obviously wasn't on the board when that was done, was so that just because somebody suggested that the road needed to be widened because of the congestion down there, or?
Yes, it was for safety, because of all the different, there's been a lot of more traffic down there recently. And it's something we had talked about several years ago, but I think it really rose to the surface, once everybody started having groceries. So many people started shipping groceries and all those kinds of things down there. So that's why it came back up again. But before, it was on the list to be paved when we got into this question before. And we went down a rabbit hole, and it was never paved. So, because we were waiting to see what we were going to do. And then it kind of fell off the radar until all of a sudden we had a lot of activity down there. And people who had never driven down there really much before started calling and complaining about the potholes in the road and visibility. And that's one reason they're going to try to move the power lines to try to alleviate some of that.
It's obviously a congested area just because of the number of houses and everything down there.
Right.
You're going to take houses and move them. But I would think that if you just paved it, and paved where the town owns, that might help improve the area significantly. So that's my 2 cents.
Yep. All right. So where do we want to leave this? Mark?
I'll make a motion to table this item for the time being. We'll revisit it later.
Okay, is there a second to that? Okay, it's been moved and seconded twice. All right. All in favor, not all, we can't do all in favor. Jay,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Bo,
No.
Mark,
Yes.
and I guess I'm yes. So it's 4-1. All right, now I can go on to the next page. And just to say that we should have accepted the resignation of Aaron Julian. He wrote to us last week, and I didn't think to do that. So we're accepting I would move that we accept with regrets the resignation of Aaron Julian from the Broadband Committee.
So moved.
All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All right, Mr. Corson,
Yes.
Ms. Beleska,
Yes.
Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yeah.
and Ms. Damon is yes. And while we're on this topic about people being on committees and making formal resignations, I really want to thank Aaron for making that formal resignation, because from what I understand, we have numerous committees here where people think they've quit the committee, and we have no knowledge that they necessarily have quit. And it might not be a bad idea at some point we send out a letter to the committees and find out who actually is coming to meetings and who's actually on the committees, because they're listed, but they say they're no longer on committees. So if people, or put it someplace so that people would put in writing that they resigned from a committee. We hate to have that happen, but we really need to know so we can replace it, because we can't advertise if we don't know somebody has actually resigned. So I've heard that's a problem in several committees. Anyway, it's just a public service announcement. Moving to communications. I received an invitation from the Island Institute to a meeting with the planning board to hear a presentation by Pete Slavinsky regarding his observations about sea level rise on Shebig and the impact on coastal dunes and bluffs, and possible next steps presented by Susie Arnold, who's on the staff of the Island Institute. Carol White was the contact person. And so I think that's tomorrow night, and on Beverly's website, there's a link. And I would encourage anybody who's on this and the board to attend that meeting. And I think there'll be an opportunity to ask questions and to be informed about what has been happening and some of the observations that they may be making. And is that 7 o'clock? Does somebody know? I didn't look up the time, but I think it's 7. But you can check on Beverly's website. I don't know if it's on the town website too, but both the planning board and the board of selectmen have been invited there. So it's been advertised just so that somebody can't say we're having a secret meeting. Anybody else have communication? Okay, seeing none. Could we have a motion to approve the minutes from October 6, 2021?
So moved.
Okay. Jay, is that a second? You kind of froze, Jay. Did you
Sure.
second?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Moved and
Yes.
seconded. Okay, all in favor? Mr. Corson,
Yes.
Ms. Beleska,
Yes.
Mr. Beaupre,
Yes.
Mr. Dyer,
Yeah.
and Ms. Damon, yes. Anybody have any future agenda items they want to add that we haven't already talked about at another meeting? Bo, and then Jen.
I was going through my sheds and I was looking, I had a whole bunch of hazmat items, old paint, containers with no labels and stuff like that. I was wondering if we were planning on doing hazmat pickup day or something. We're not doing a whole bulk weekend, but at least the hazmats and get that off the island.
Justin, can you address that?
There's no day set right now for it, so if you want one, we can set one up. But with the, we're trying to get away from storing this stuff at the transfer station because it really shouldn't be there.
Yeah, because I think that Bo's raised a good point, because we didn't do it last year, and people may have things that need to be taken care of. So I don't know that we need to add that to an agenda. Maybe we can just ask the town administrator, maybe we can come up with, we can just right now authorize him to find out when they can come and do it. Anybody want to make that into a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second? Chris has raised her hand.
I need a motion.
Okay, so Bo, what is the motion?
To move the town administrator to look into organizing to get the hazmat picked up on the island.
And is there a second to that? And Jay has seconded it. Any discussion? Mark?
Have we got this in the budget, Justin?
We do if you're, well, it depends. Maybe if you want to do the bulky waste day in the spring, we might not. But if you're not going to do that at all, then we can use what we had budgeted for that to do this.
Thank you.
We've already cleared out all the hazardous waste we did that a month or two ago. That was at the transfer station. So they've come out once already this year, but we haven't had like a day for people to drop stuff off.
Thank you.
Okay, so, and I would assume that that would also be that the public would have ample notice on the town website, and Beverly, if she's willing to host it, and Facebook and all that, so that people know that this is going to happen. Bo?
Yeah, they came out a few months ago, but the town wasn't supposed to be collecting it. So that's why I want to advertise it and do it proper.
Yeah. Okay, anyone in the audience have a question about what we're talking about? This is hazardous waste, and the town will publish someplace what that includes, which is like oil-based paint and a lot of different things we have around our houses. All right, so it's been moved and seconded. Mr. Corson?
Yes.
Ms. Deleska?
Yes.
Mr. Beaupre?
Yes.
Mr. Dyer?
Yes.
And Ms. Damon is yes. All right. Anything else? Jen, you had your hand up with an idea for a future agenda item.
Yeah, I thought somewhere in our communication that Barney Baker was going to talk about the proposals and what they put forth. I know it was preliminary, but when are we looking at all that stuff?
I think that Justin in his report said he hoped to get something in the next couple of weeks. So as soon as we get it, we'll have it as an agenda item.
Got it.
Thanks. Okay, anybody else have anything? All right, could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I think we don't have to vote on that. Unless somebody really wants to stay on here. Thank you to all of the people who have been on here all night. We really appreciate your public participation. It really helps us in the process of